at mwmfinancial.tax.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when. You're moving out. I said, when you're moving out.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Since Governor Jelly Belly likes to compare and contrast himself to DeSantis so much, at least he used to once upon a time. During COVID, he certainly did.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Let's do a little comparison contrast. So while Jelly Belly was calling Trump and Trump supporters Nazis and introducing a budget that brings his spending increase during time in office to 40% plus, the state of Illinois gobbling up and spending 40% more in the proposed budget this fiscal year than it did pre-COVID. Big number. 40% better things are in Illinois? Question mark. Here's what you could have been doing. Instead of watching new Marxists introduce legislation to provide student aid to inmates or to legalize prostitution, you could be talking about a legislative session that would tackle some issues that are material to the quality of life of the people who play by the rules in your state, like Ron DeSantis did, talking about property taxes in a state with no income tax and no estate tax, no inheritance tax, and still has lower property taxes, significantly lower property taxes than Illinois, but they're not low enough for Ron DeSantis, particularly for people who are getting taxed out of their homes because the homestead exemption isn't as much as he'd like it to be. Take a listen.
Pay for these spending habits, subject their citizens to higher taxes, such as higher property taxes, to pay for these spending habits. And, you know, these property taxes, it's like you buy a home, you buy land, you know, maybe you buy the home outright, but maybe you pay off a mortgage over 30 years. And then, okay, you've paid off the mortgage, you bought the land, you've been taxed many times. It's like, is it your property or not? Just for being on your property, you got to write a check to the government every year. So you're basically paying rent to the government to live on your own property. And our homestead exemption is not strong enough to help these folks because the property gets assessed so high. And that's the thing. If you buy a home for $300,000 and you know there's certain tax, well, then what? 10 years later, they say it's worth $700,000, and so, and they say, you know, there's homestead stuff that helps protect you to a certain extent, but you're paying more, and a lot of people can't afford that. So I think that that's a big issue, and I know we're going to be really looking at ways to bring people relief from that, because I think it's been really something that's pinching a lot of homeowners, particularly seniors on fixed income. But the reality is people have seen, and this is not the state, we don't control this, you know, we've not allowed any of that stuff to happen. We've been cutting taxes, but people have seen their property tax liability go up over these last years because the property is being assessed higher and higher. And the reality is you don't really know how much your home is worth until someone offers you money and is willing to pull the trigger on a sale. That's how a market works. You can say it's worth this much, but if no one's willing to come and offer you that much, then why should you pay taxes on that amount? And so there's a lot of things that need to be done with that. But as part of our DOGE initiative, our state task force will look into local government expenditures.
Oh, wow, DOGE task force. Does that sound familiar to anybody in Chicagoland, in Illinois?
Wow. I mean, You don't have a state income tax now. You might not have to pay property taxes.
Well, it's not. I don't think he's going that far. He's not going to go that far. But even property tax relief for people that are for seniors or people that are of a certain threshold in terms of home value. I'm for whatever. I'm for whatever provides people relief for, especially as you go lower down the property value and ostensibly the household income. The biggest investment people make. I'm all for that, and it's great that DeSantis is pushing in that direction, despite the fact that you have property values increasing in Florida,
right,
as compared to you finding out and being shocked to find out what they tell you your property is worth, your house is worth in Illinois, and then you put it on the market and you find it's worth that minus 10, 20, 30, 40%. I mean, I got to tell you, just to give you my anecdote without getting into the numbers, my property taxes have gone up since I bought my place in Florida.
Well, yeah, because your values have gone sky high, haven't they?
Right. Yeah. But my property taxes in Florida are about 1.5 times what they were for a one-bedroom condo at Lake Point Tower in Chicago. They're about 1.5 times.
How many square feet was your place?
Yeah, right. Well, first of all, it's almost twice as big, but 1.5 times the property taxes I pay in Florida versus Chicago for a one-bedroom condo. My property value is 5 times what my condo is worth when I sold it.
Wow.
So,
and
no
you don't
income
have to pay
tax,
monthly assessments either.
no state income tax. No inheritance tax. They got schools. They got police departments down here. They got fire departments. It's actually quite a nice little spot. So it can be done, as everybody who's gotten out a bit knows. For more on all this, Ted Dabrowski joins us, president of Wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Ted, how about Ron DeSantis driving that property tax conversation?
I mean, what a different conversation, right? Here they are talking about getting rid of taxes, challenging the status quo, and that's a place that already has really low taxes and doesn't tax incomes. It's fascinating, and it's a mindset. And what's scary about Illinois is that we've got the exact opposite mindset, and even our own reformers won't speak that way. And what's interesting, we put out a piece on Pritzker's budget, and in there we looked at in Illinois comparing to Indiana or comparing to Florida on education spending. If we spent on a per-student basis what Indiana spends, or either one, Indiana or Florida, we could give back tomorrow a $10 billion rebate, property tax rebate, to all Illinoisans. I mean, it's fascinating how much extra we're spending for worse results. So we could have a massive, nice, what they call it, a Doge dividend, if we just spent what Florida and Indiana spent.
Yeah, but nobody's moving to Florida and Indiana. They're all staying in Illinois, and it's a magnet state.
Well, that's right. That's if you hear it from Pritzker, that's exactly what he's saying. The possibilities to really bring the taxes down in Illinois are phenomenal. Of course, there's one predicate to all that, of course, and DeSantis can do that in Florida, but we in Illinois would have to break one thing, and that's that whole two-class system we have in Illinois. We'll never bring property taxes down as long as the government class gets us guaranteed pensions, guaranteed contracts, guaranteed raises, Amendment 1, subsidized health, all that stuff. We have to break that because that's where all the money goes. So you have to break that two-class system, and there's a lot of laws that have to be changed to do that.
Your take on the polling out yesterday, BLM Brandon, 7% approval, 80% disapproval, and that's a universe that voted 71% for Kamala Harris. There's something in there that is encouraging in a sense. 71% of that universe supported Kamala Harris, and only 7% have a favorable view of Brandon Johnson. That must mean policies matter.
Well, it's hard to say, right? I mean, because we had kind of this argument when Lightfoot was in. Policies mattered, and when we kicked her out, who did we get? We got Brandon. So, and maybe people didn't understand. I mean, we can be nice and say something like that. So the question would be, would these people vote for something dramatically different, or they don't like Johnson because Johnson says all kinds of things that are just inane. Would they vote for somebody who has totally different policies and who is more Doge-like and who is more looking to make Chicago the amazing city it is. I don't know. It's hard to say. Nor as you've talked about, nor do we know if somebody's out there who would even speak that way and lead that way.
Yeah, no, that is the rub. It is an unanswered question, and it's hard to really test it because you have to have, carbon-based life form actually present themselves and make the case and see how far they can get. So there's only so much that polling can tell you. You're right about that.
But it is ripe. It is ripe. I mean, people are looking. They're smelling. They're looking for something different. It's just a question of how far they would go when they vote. And again, it's also how persuasive somebody is in bringing about change to Chicago.
But the Republicans should pounce on this. I mean, here's the data. Here's the facts. Math doesn't lie. Do something about it. And who, if anyone, is there? Ted Dabrowski.
I don't know. There are some names out there. I'm seeing as I talk to people in Chicago. There's people getting interested. I'm seeing, Democrats who would typically have been, let's say, status quo Democrats, starting to sound like reformers, and it's pretty neat to see, and they're willing to go on paper and put things down. So that's a good change, but does it turn into something real? We still have to wait, I think.
Another aspect of this, particularly against the backdrop of how woeful the reading and math scores are in CPS, and frankly the state of Illinois generally. This opportunity that's being missed, and there's been a good deal of talk about it, but it needs to be sustained. Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe, Deadliest Catch, Mike Rowe, Discovery Channel, was on with Leland Biddard on his News Nation program, and he talked about the skills gap and the 8 million jobs that are going unfilled in the trades that could be filled, and where those workers are. And I just want to play this clip and get your reaction, because I thought this was really sharp, as Roe usually is.
In the trades, the skilled trades, 5 people retire, 2 come in. 5 leave, 2 come in. The math has never been on our side, and people know there's a skills gap. You can look at the BLS and you can see 8 million open positions, most of which don't require a 4-year degree. You can see the cost of college going up. You can see the pressure we put on kids to get a 4-year degree, even though that piece of paper isn't a prerequisite for most of the opportunities that exist, and by the way, pay 6 figures. So there's a lot of myths and misperceptions and stigmas and stereotypes that are leading to this disconnect. But we're about to turn a corner for the exact reason you point out. The math is just not there. I just got a call from the Maritime Industrial Submarine Complex, 15,000 individual companies jointly tasked with delivering 3 nuclear-powered submarines every year for the next 10 years. They need to hire 100,000 tradespeople in the next 8 years. 100,000. This is one industry that most people don't even think about. Right? They literally called and said, do you know where they are? We're looking. And I said, yeah, man, I know where they are. They're in the 8th grade.
I know where they are. They're in the 8th grade. You want to talk about an opportunity for a school system or a state or, frankly, other private sector entities to partner with an entire industry where there's a direct sort of skills development to well-paying job pipeline. That's just one example.
Oh, it's a fascinating opportunity, and there's a lot of people talking about it. And I would say that most people don't hear about it, but it's probably one of the bigger movements that's going on in the background with success, and everybody recognizes it now, especially at these colleges, for all the DEI stuff and all the costs. And so here's what's going to happen, right? You're going to have a whole bunch of different private sector groups create these type of opportunities in conjunction with other groups. It's going to happen. And I give you a good example, Chicago Hope Academy, which if you guys don't know Chicago,
of course.
You guys know them.
Yeah, we know that.
Mazikowski.
For the listeners, the Chicago Hope Academy is just a fascinating place for its values, for its energy of what it's doing for kids. But it's also building a whole trade, let's call it, what do you want to call it, a trade area, and where they're going to teach those skills, and they're combining with unions. They're raising lots of money. It's kind of a mini thing of what's to come. I hope they're successful with it because it's what has to happen. And, you look at these results, and we were looking the other day at Milwaukee and all these major cities that have a lot of talent. 4%, 5% reading proficiency. It's sad, horrendous, and this is one way out. And again, I don't think we should forget about kids reading, but the path could be different in where we actually teach kids, one, how to read, but how to do something where they can succeed. So it's a big thing, and I'm optimistic about it.
Ted Dabrowski, President of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Thanks as always, Ted.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
The fight against abortion in Illinois has never been more important than it is right now. Thanks to our elected officials, Illinois has become an abortion tourism destination. The number of abortions in our state continues